Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to one and all present over here. It gives me tremendous contentment and great pleasure to welcome you all on the last day of 1 week workshop on research methodology organized by Department of Economics, Postgraduate and Research Center, YNM AKI's Poona College of Arts, Science and Commerce. On this last day, we have two sessions scheduled for the participants. The first session would be conducted by Dr. As Mohammed sir. Dr. As Mohammed sir is an assistant professor in the Department of Economics, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Sir has teaching interest in microeconomics, statistics, macroeconomics, international economics, industrial economics, and applied econometrics. His research areas include efficiency and productivity analysis, intellectual property rights, macroeconomic policies. Sir has done his PhD in economics from School of Economics, University of Hyderabad, India, and also he has done his postdoctoral research in economics from the School of Economics, University of Hyderabad, India. Sir is having many years of experience. He was working as a junior consultant in the Institute of Economic Growth in New Delhi. And prior to Jamia Millia Islamia, Sir was working as an assistant professor in the Department of Economics in the Central University of Tamil Nadu, India. Sir has many scholarships and awards to his credit, in which in 2010 he received University Grants Commission National Eligibility Test NET with JRF, and Sir has also received University Grants Commission Junior Research Fellowship JRF for PhD in 2013. Sir has many publications in the various reputed journals. One of the publication is Efficiency Analysis of Indian Pharmaceutical Companies in the Post-TRIPS and Post-Product Patent Regime using Stochastic Frontier Approach. Sir has a book entitled The Efficiency and Productivity of Indian Pharmaceutical Companies, a firm level analysis, which was published by Cambridge Scholar Publishing UK ISBN, with the ISBN number of UK. Sir is working on an assignment which is impact assessment of FDI in Indian pharmaceutical industry. He has many publications in various conferences and seminars, and also Sir has attended various workshops and trainings at different institutions all over India. Sir is also a member of Input Output Research Association. With this huge profile, I was very much fascinated to read your profile, sir, and I welcome you on behalf of Department of Economics for this 1 week workshop on research methodology.
So can I start now?
Yes, sir. You may continue with your session now. The platform is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anna, for introducing. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope the screen is visible to all of you, and also am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Just you have to speak, I think, little louder. I don't know whether it's only with me or others also. Shahid sir, can you confirm? Sir's voice is clearly audible.
Am I clearly audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So you may continue, please.
Continue.
Okay. So the topic for today's session, Anna, it's not moving. Yeah. So yeah, it's report writing and understanding the various classification of journals, structuring a research article and targeting right journals and publication process. So first I will be covering the structuring of a research article, then we will be moving on to the report writing and the journals for research publications. So when it comes to the structure of research, paper, project, thesis, dissertation, so this used to be the structure, the overall structure in most of the cases, where first the research problem is to be formulated. I'll come to that how the research problem is to be formulated. Briefly, I will go one by one. Then ultimately, my focus will be on the report writing. So the formulation of research problems, how the research problem is to be identified, how to come from a broad topic to the how to narrow it down, and what should be the characteristics of the research problem which an individual is going to conduct. So I will be highlighting some of the characteristics, then the extensive literature review, what has been done and what is to be done, developing the hypothesis, which will be covered in the next session, and preparing the research design, which is a framework or the blueprint for overall research, how to conduct from beginning to the end, and also determining the sample design, what sort of sample, if it is a primary kind of survey, then how the sample should be designed, also collection of the data. Then there are you have the quantitative data, the qualitative data, and also the primary or secondary. What sort of data you are dealing with? It will again depend on what sort of research problem has been identified by the researcher. Then the execution of the plan or execution of the project, how the particular project or the thesis or the research paper is going to be executed, what is going to be the course of action, what sort of process methods involved, what sort of techniques are going to be employed, then the analysis of data, hypothesis testing, as I said, the hypothesis design and hypothesis testing will be in the next session. And the discussion of results and main findings, which used to be the crux of the whole analysis, then generalization and interpretation, and finally the preparation of the report or the presentation of results, or we can call it the formal write-up of conclusion. So this used to be broadly what we call the overall structure of the research project, paper, or thesis, dissertation. Either it is the dissertation of master's, MPhil, or PhD. So let's come to these steps or the structure one by one. Let's see first the problem formulation, where we need to identify the content within the process, determining 4Cs, the constraint, conclusions, courses of action, consequences. So constraint, this is actually very important, particularly those who are the new researchers, those who are joining PhD or MPhil or conducting or trying to write some research article. Firstly, need to identify the constraint. Then there may be various type of constraint. There may be resource constraint, there may be data constraint, there may be time constraint. And also on theoretical ground, there may be other constraint, whether the particular problem you have identified is researchable or not. Similarly, the conclusion, what sort of intention you have, what you are going to intend, what you are intending to do, and the courses of action, how you are going to execute the plan, and what are going to be the consequences of your particular study. So steps in a research problem or identifying the problems. Firstly, a broad topic is to be identified. Generally, what happens, people used to start looking the topics from the beginning. they used to read the news articles or journals. But when you are going to do certain serious research, firstly you need to identify broad topic. Then accordingly, that particular area you need to study either from the journals or the books what you are going to study. So identifying a broad topic or broad area should be the first step in identifying the research problem. Then from this broad topic, how to narrow it down? It should be narrowed down. Then once it is narrowed down, then raise questions about what you are going or how you are going to design the research question, what you are going to intend. Because based on your research question only, you are going to formulate the objectives of this study. How to narrow down a topic? For example, uh, here there is a sort of chart. Suppose the broad topic is food insecurity. So if we have to narrow it down, so what are the determinant for food insecurity? So suppose in this chart we have two sort of determinant. It could be either low land productivity or low labor productivity. These are two determinant. There could be many other determinants also. There could be natural calamities, or there could be some others determinant also. For example, this is for the sake of your understanding, how to narrow it down a topic from a broad perspective to the what you are going to do. Suppose from food insecurity, one of the determinant is low labor productivity. Now, what is the determinant of low labor productivity? It could be unskilled labor force, lack of awareness, lack of availability of the training programs among, particularly in the informal sector, or for uneducated pupil or unskilled pupil. So that need to be identified. Similarly, the other determinants, if for example, low land productivity. So it could causes for poor for improvement of this. Why it has stopped all of a sudden? Was there any technical issue?
Yes, sir, there was some issue.
Should I share my screen again, or
Yes, sir, you can.
okay? So these are again the ways in which a broad topic can be narrowed down, because sometimes we are not aware what is a researchable topic or what is not, whether a particular problem is researchable or not, we can do or not. Sometimes we are taking something very general which cannot be the topic of research, so we need to narrow it down and could make it researchable. It's not moving. So as I said, there are certain characteristics of an appropriate research problem. It should it should with basis. You cannot go, say for example, if you are looking, say for example, the impact of foreign direct investment or foreign private investment, and if you are not very well aware about theories or the perspective of that, then doing with a lot of mistakes in that if it is not supported by the theoretical models. So it's theoretical relevant also, that has to be seen. Similarly, the originality, the work should be original and it should be relevant, feasible, and narrowed down, interrogative form, as well as the ethical consideration, which is also very important for conducting any sort of research. So, for example, what is researchable or what is not researchable question? Non-researchable, for example, should I put my youngster in preschool? This is not. So, research should not be in such a way either yes or no. Rather, what could be the researchable question? Do children enrolled in preschool develop better skills, social skills than children not enrolled? This could be researchable. So, we need to identify the particular topic we have selected. The character of the problem, it should be smart, where S stand for specific, M stand for measurable, A stand for attainable or achievable, R stand for realistic, and T for time bounded. All these aspects are very important for any research. So to be specific, as I said, it should not be something general, it should not be yes or more questions. You need to find out a problem which should be very specific and also measurable. You cannot make it measurable, then only you can be sure what you have done. Also, it should be attainable or achievable. You can achieve, because there are constraints, particularly the resource constraint, the time constraint in this respect, whether in a given time frame, the particular objectives you are going to frame, they could be achieved or they could be attained or not. That also has to be looked before identifying the research problem. Also, it should be realistic. It should be realistic. What you are going to do should be relevant and realistic. It should not be something, as if, for example, you are conducting again. You are looking the impact of foreign private investment before 1990, which was a very tiny proportion of our economic growth of our GDP, which is not at all relevant. So, when you are formulating any research or conducting any research, it should be realistic and time bounded. That is equally important. What kind of research you are doing, you need to frame or you need to find out how much time it is going to take. So it may be master's dissertation, MPhil. So MPhil is no longer there, PhD. In every cases, similarly for any project, there used to be time limitations. So the work you are going to do, it should be completed in the given time frame. So all these characteristics need to be applied to a good research problem to make it thorough and conclusive. And without these, the research may fall apart and the problem may not appear to be fully solved, or the general structure of the problem may not seem clear and consistent. So without a careful planning the research work may end up useless. You may not be getting anything out of that. It simply be useless or simply the wastage of resources and time. So all these characteristics are to be keep in mind before conducting a research. The other aspect is literature review. So what all about the literature reviews? To identify what everybody has done and to think what nobody else had thought of doing. That's it. That is the literature review. So considering that only, what has been done in the past in that particular area you have identified, that has to be taken. Now that also can be narrowed down, particularly the time period you are looking. It's always advisable to take the recent time period, and also what is the location or the region you have selected, if it is relevant to that. Suppose you are doing some studies in the Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries, so it's better to take the studies conducting in that particular area, because if you are taking studies conducted in the West, so there the circumstances or the characteristics may be different, and you will be having a different perspective. So then again, if you are narrowing down within your literature review, so apart from the time, the other things and also the methodological aspects also can be looked at, what you are going to apply and what has been applied by others, and what you are going to do further in that. And from the literature review only, the research gap is also to be identified. Okay, formulation and testing of hypothesis is the subject of the next session. So I will simply be skipping all about this, the steps involved in formulation of the hypothesis, as well as the testing of hypothesis or the interpretation of the p-value or hypothesis test. So all these I am just skipping. Research design is the next in the structure of research article, which is, as I said, the research design is a framework or the blueprint for conducting the research. So it's basically it details the procedures which is necessary for the sort of information you needed, and how you are going to structure your study for solving the research problem which has been identified by the researcher. So everything from the beginning till the end will be within this framework, what we call as the research design. There used to be certain component of the research design. For example, defining the information needed, design of exploratory, descriptive, or causal phases of the research, specifying the measurements and scaling procedures, construct and pretest a questionnaire, and specify the sampling process or sample size, which has been done already in the beginning, and developing a plan for data analysis. Again, there is this classification of research design, which I am skipping here. Data collection at identifying or determining data, whether we are going to have the data on individual basis, household basis, organized basis, or state level, district level, country level, what is going to be the unit of analysis that has to be. And also determining the relevant variable on which data is to be collected. So the general practice is that you need to have larger and larger variables for collection of the data, because at the time of analysis or doing the data analysis, sometimes you may end up with shortage of the variables, and sometimes we face the problem that the particular variable is missing. We would have included that the study or the results could be better. So you need to have more and more piece of information, then you will be having better and better results. So the variables need to be larger, particularly with respect to your study, and they also should be relevant, and that also can be identified from what we have done in the literature review. You may have the whole list of the variables required or already collected by others, and then from there you can find out the suitable variables which are really important. And also the selection of variable also has to be certain basis from the theoretical background, which are also very important or relevant or realistic to the theoretical model of your study problems. As I said, while conducting the foreign direct investment, you need to have the investment models, and then in investment model you need to have certain important variables like rate of interest, the credit, banking credit, and all. So all these certain important variables should not be missed. Otherwise, you will be ending up with a certain biased studies or inappropriate or incomplete study. So the qualitative and quantitative I have already mentioned. So yeah, there used to be certain uh, sources of the potential errors. It could be from the random sampling error, non-random sampling error, or non-sampling error, response error, while particularly conducting the primary survey and all. So the researcher's error, interviewer error, respondent error, all these need to be clearly identified and also to be avoided. Surrogate information error, measurement error, population definition error, sampling frame error, data analysis error. Similarly, you may have the interviewer error, the respondent selection error, whether you are biased or you are selecting the respondent in appropriately as per the sampling technique or not. The questioning error, how or what sort of question you are framing, whether they are relevant to your study or not. Recording error, sometimes the interview, the person you are interviewing is saying something and you may end up recording something else. Cheating error, inability error, unwillingness. Sometimes the respondent are not willing to give an interview, but if you are forcing, so you may end up with what we call illogical or may not be relevant certain cases. So all these are potential sources of error. The results and interpretation after all that, after collecting and analyzing the data, the researchers has to accomplish the task of drawing inferences. That is followed by the report writing, which we will be coming to that, which is going to be our focus. So this has to be done very carefully, otherwise misleading conclusions may be drawn and the whole purpose of doing research may be vitiated. And you will end up with what we call overall useless exercise. So the conclusion and what we call the inferences should be drawn very accurately with a lot of accuracy, and it should be in line with what you have been doing since beginning. Particularly, you need to remember the course of research study. There should be the constant interaction between the initial objectives, the hypothesis, the empirical observations, and theoretical conception. So it should be what we call intertwined with the analysis. The whole analysis should be. It should not. You should not have the distinctly separated analysis for separate section. So there should be a flow in your interpretation. Okay, now finally the report writing. Now the whole purpose of conducting research and the success of your research will be depending on how you are communicating your research, how you are making your work available to others. So the success of your research work, of your projects will be depending particularly how you are making it reachable to the others. If you are not making it reachable to others, then it will be end up or it will be confined within you. It means whatever you are thinking, it is with you only. So it may not be successful. So this is very important aspect, how effectively you are communicating your work done to the rest of the world. Once your work is communicated properly, then only it will be cited by others. You will get recognition, you will get appreciation, your work will be recognized by many other researchers. It will be a contribution in the literature, in the academics. If you fail to make it reachable to others, if you are not communicating effectively, then it may not be successful. It means your contribution will become zero. So there used to be certain things. There used to be a larger proportion of what a researcher thinks, what we think, what we do, what we convey, and what others understand. There are four things: what we are thinking, and what we end up doing, and how we are conveying it to others, and what others are understanding. So it used to be very tiny proportion what others are understanding or what we are conveying to others as compared to what we are thinking and doing. So our equal importance or focus should be on how we are conveying or what we are conveying and how others are taking, or how attractive we have made it, or how easy we have made it to understand to others. Because the whole success of your whole exercise will be depending on your effective communication, and that is done through the report writing. And report writing is not just the writing of your final findings. It's from the beginning, from the title you have taken, what the title, how you have written the title, from the objectives you have formulated, from the research period, your analysis of the data, your results, everything includes in that report writing. So it's a means to convey some information to other. Now it's up to you how effectively you are communicating or you are conveying. More and more effective, more and more contribution you are making, and there you are going to be recognized. So a report writing is an organized, factual, objective presentation of information. Organized because it follows a systematic pattern, this structure, which I have just shown. Objective means it should not be influenced by your personal feelings. What you have been doing, that has to be reflected. And the report writing is a comprehensive document and covers all aspects of the subject matter of study. As I said, it's not only the final conclusions. So it's a written document that communicates the purpose, the scope, the objectives, the hypothesis, the methodology, the findings, the limitations, and finally, recommendation of the research project to others. It is more than a summary of findings. That's what I was telling. It's a record of the research process, the whole structure, how you have structured and how you are presenting this structure. Sometimes what happens that many researchers, they used to conduct the researches, and their findings also used to be making certain senses, but they fails to present them, they fails to convey those meaningfully. So that should be avoided. So researcher has to convince the audience that the research findings can be acted on for their own benefit. So now it's up to the researchers how he or she is going to convince. So there used to be two types of reports, the technical reports and popular reports. The technical reports used to be suitable for the targeted audience of researchers or other people familiar and interested in the technicalities such as the research design, sampling method, statistical designs, or details. Say, for example, if you are looking the stock market performances and the exchange rate volatility, and you are using the high frequency data, and also you are using some panel econometrics very advanced level. So it is going to be technical. There will be a lot of technicalities. Then obviously it will be for the targeted audience only. It may not be for a layman's perspective. So that should be targeted only the specific audience. Similarly, the other type of report used to be the popular reports, which is suitable for more general audience interested mainly in research finding, as it is non-technical in nature. Particularly, you are considering the developmental aspect. You are looking the health infrastructure. You are looking, for example, the educational problems or health-related issues. Now, this sort of problems or research problems, if it is conducted, then the writing style should be designed in such a way to facilitate easy and rapid reading and understanding of research finding and recommendations for a layman also. Then only it will be more and more reachable to others. So here the technicality should be avoided. Technicals should be avoided in such. So what is the journal format of such a report? So what is the major categories? There will be these preliminaries, the textual body, and the references. What is included in the preliminary section, you have the title page, the acknowledgement, the table of content, list of tables and figures. Now, with respect to title, is it clear and concise? The title made, whether it is conveying what you are intending to do or not. Does it promise no more than the study can provide, or also whether it include what all you are going to do in your research? So the title should be conveying this. And there is this main body of the report. So that is the text of the thesis or the article of the or the project. This is very important section in the organization of research report. Here the quality of word are basically examined, and this used to be the original contribution of the researcher. So the report of main body serves the function of demonstrating the competence of researcher. If any sentence, paragraph, concept fail to solve the single function within a given section or chapter, then this whole exercise will become irrelevant. So generally, the main body of the research reports consist of these chapters: the introduction or the theoretical framework, the literature review, as we have seen part of in the structure of the articles, the design, data collection, analysis. And now here we will look all these aspects with respect to report writing, how we are going to report all these steps. So in introduction, we used to have this statement of problem, objectives, hypothesis, significance of the study, the assumptions, the limitations, and the important terms we are going to use. Now, with respect to the problem, is it clearly stated? When it comes to the report writing or writing your first, the beginning after the problems, in the introduction, how you are going to write it? Stated, is it properly recognized? Are specific questions raised and hypotheses are clearly stated? Whether you have certain ambiguity only what are going to be the of this study? Are the important terms defined beforehand? So these are certain things which needs to be incorporated. Similarly, in case covered adequate
Sir, I think there is some network issue. They are not able to hear you. Ask, sir.
okay. Visible?
Yes, sir. Now it's
Am I audible now? Okay.
yes,
So
sir.
whether particularly the findings or the studies conducted by the eminent researcher in the particular area has been noted or not? Is it well organized? Is an effective summary provided? Is the researcher commented adequately? So all these needs to be incorporated while writing the literature review. Similarly, with respect to the research design and methodology, is the research design described in detail? Is the method adequate you are applying, or there is also the requirement for additional methods, or whether it is appropriately chosen or not. Is the population defined properly? Is the sample described properly or not? The relevant variables has been recognized, whether a particular variable has been left out or not. If a particular variable is left out, then you may will end up with biased study, or it may be irrelevant in certain cases. Appropriate controls have been provided or not. We have collected the data. What are the techniques and tools have been utilized? The validity and reliability has been established or not. All these has to be checked while reporting or while writing the research methodology when it comes to the report writing. Similarly, with respect to the data analysis, is appropriate use made of the tables and figures, because fixing or setting all these figures as well as the tables, tabulations also used to be very explanation of the table is given, the description of the variable has been given or not. All this has to be looked writing. Adequately or not, the inference is stated as said, the report writing or communicating your work, it basically includes from your title to what you have conducted in your introduction part, the literature review part, the data analysis, the data collection, the variable, everything has to be written in a very effective way so that it could be reachable or it could be recognized. Similarly, the references generally in case of social sciences, the American Psychological Association style is formulated. The book, the papers, and the proceedings, and the precautions that need to be taken for writing the research report. So, firstly, one should keep in mind that it should be long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to maintain the interest. The balance should be made. The subject has to be covered, and also the interest of the audience should not be lost. So a researcher should not be dull. That should be avoided. It should be such as to sustain readers' interest. The abstract terminology and technicality should be avoided. Once you have done your analysis, you are ready with your results, then you are not supposed to be using the expressions like it seems, or there may be, or this could be. Once you have the results, then those results should be stated clearly. The study has found this, there is this causation, there is this relationship, there is this impact, there is this perfect, the performance evaluation, whatever you are conducting. So now the ambiguity should not be there. The result should be clearly stated once you have done your analysis following the appropriate procedures. Also, the layout of the report should be well thought out and must be appropriate in accordance with the objectives of the research problem that need to be checked at every stage, whether the objectives formulated in the beginning has been achieved or not. It should not be the case that the objective was something else and you have done something else. Also, the report should be free from grammatical mistakes. It should be prepared strictly in accordance with the techniques of composition of report writing, such as use of quotations, footnotes, documentation, proper punctuation. All these should be taken care. Also, the report must present the logical analysis of the subject matter. It must reflect a structure wherein the different pieces of analysis relating to the research problem are fitting well or not. So also ultimately the report must also state the policy implications that also need to be the suggestions or for the indication for further studies, the further areas, the future studies that should also be highlighted, that the further work can be done in this particular area, so that the interest will be there for the audience. So all these need to be taken care. You are also suggesting certain policy measures out of your findings, and that should also be properly framed. Certain forecast should also be made what we have done, and what is the future prospects in that particular field. That also need to be taken. Lastly, which is very important, finally, avoiding the plagiarism. All knowledge in your head has either been copied from someplace or originally discovered by you. Most knowledge be copied. This is true in most settings. So general knowledge is copied. Most teachers' lectures are copied knowledge. So humans are naturally copiers, but this is not what we would typically call plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Among other things, plagiarism refers to taking others' work and representing it as if it were your own. So what has to be done to avoid it? Document every source of information that is not general knowledge. This includes facts and ideas. Cite every time a fact or idea is used, unless it is clear that one citation is referring to a group of facts or ideas. If your quote material, put quotation marks around the quoted stuff and include a page number with the citation. It's all right to refresh the material, and this is what generally the researchers used to do. They used to change the language. They used to refresh the materials, but you still have to cite, you still have to give the reference from where you have refreshed this material for this particular sentence. Whenever in doubt, cite the source. This is how you can avoid the plagiarism. Otherwise, you will end up being in trouble if you are not taking care of the plagiarism. And there are these days very strict norms against the plagiarism. Okay, we have lesser times. Let's briefly talk about the journals for research publication. So generally, the most desirable journals are the Scopus Index journals. So the first choice of the researcher should be to publish the research article or the projects or the book in a Scopus Index journal. These days, even in the recruitment as well as the other agencies are also, they are asking for the Scopus Index journal, whether your work has been published by Scopus Index journal or not. So this is highly recognized. Even the government agencies are also asking for the Scopus Index journals. These days, they are not asking even for the others. If not in Scopus indexed, then UGC care list journals. The journals which are included in the UGC care list. And the weak form, if not the above two, then it should be at least the peer-reviewed journals. So the paper, the article you are going to publish, it should be at least minimum in the peer-reviewed journals. Okay, so whenever you are conducting the research, you are putting a lot of time. So equally, you need to look at the good journals also. Because if you are publishing your work in a good journals, it will be more and more reachable to others. The larger audience, you are publishing your work in a reputed journals, So it will make your work more recognizable, and you will be having. So that is Scopus Index Journal. So this is about where the research should be published, the article should be published. So I think what we have covered here, the structure of research proposal or the research articles, also the report writing. Since we are running short of time, so there is also the time for the next presenter. I'm going to stop it here only. So that's all from my side. Thank you everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request if any participant has any question to sir, you can ask your question. If it's related to report writing, if anyone has any query, I've allowed you to unmute yourself. One by one, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Abdu.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you
Yes,
are.
you are.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asar, for your nice presentation. Just I'm following your presentation on report writing. It's very good. So I have one question. In publishing area, just they are listed in Scopus indexes as well as UGC care list and the peer-reviewed journals. So what is the difference among these three things to publish on each of them, and what is the benefits for the authors if we publish from, for example, in Scopus or in peer-reviewed journals? So what the benefits with regards to the authors as well as to the publisher, and what's their difference, in mainly their difference? Because I am publishing one journals on articles, just it is on reviewed on journals of indigenous and cultures. So maybe this journal, maybe it's not.
Well, I think I have got your question, and
Scopus.
it's a very relevant question.
Okay, explain this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Should I answer it or we are collecting?
No, sir, you can answer one by one.
I should answer it or we are collecting
Yes,
some more questions?
no, you can continue with this. Answer this question first.
Okay, so in the last, this is what I have been highlighting the difference when it comes to publishing your research work. Having high impact factor, they are more reputed, and also they are cited more when it comes to the UGC care list, because some of the journals, even from the what we call the Scopus index, will be there in UGC index only the high quality journals only. So once you are publishing your work, firstly, the condition for their publications is going to indicate they are going to peer review your work in such a way. So high quality work means, and accordingly it is going to be recognized, and also it is going to be reachable to more and more. And also it has been seen and observed that the paper published in highly reputed journals as Scopus index journals, they are cited more and more. So when you will be going into the job market, this is your citations which will matter. What is the quality of research? How much citations from each research work? So better and better the research quality, better and better the research journal, more and more will be the citations, and more reachable work. I hope you have understood this. I have made your doubt clear.
Yes, sir. Do we
Yes.
have another question? Gayatri Verma, do you want to ask a question? You have raised your hand. Okay, sir. I think that's all from the participants. There are no more questions. Your presentation has been really clear in understanding the steps that should be followed by the researchers in order to have an impactful report writing. At the end of the session, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. As Mohammed sir for conducting today's session on report writing. Sir has explained the importance of report writing in an effective demonstration of the research, for an effective demonstration of the research. Sir has also very minutely explained all the essential steps for an impactful report writing, leading to positive acceptance of the article by the journal. Sir has also discussed the precautions that one has to take while writing the reports, and Sir has discussed the right ways of structuring a research article in order to target the right journal and how researchers can avoid plagiarism. Sir has described the publication process and journals for research publication like Scopus Index journals, UGC, care listed journals, and peer-reviewed journals that one can opt for publication. I'm really thankful to you, sir, for taking out time and conducting today's session. It was a very well-planned, well-drafted presentation of yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, with this, participants, we come to the last session of the 1 week workshop on research methodology. Our next resource person is Dr. Bhavna Deshpande, madam. Ma'am, are you there? Bhavna, ma'am?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I am there.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Bhavna Deshpande, ma'am, is an assistant professor in the Department of Statistics at Poona College of Arts, Science and Commerce. She started her career as faculty with the Institute of Science, Nagpur, which is a government science college in the Department of Statistics. She was also selected as a faculty in statistics by MPSC, and she served this institute for almost 4 years. And last 32 years, she has been in Pune and presently working as a faculty member in the statistics for undergraduate courses in computer science in Poona College of Arts, Science and Commerce. She has also worked as a visiting faculty for various postgraduate courses in statistics and computer science under Pune University. The very specialized courses that she taught are quantitative techniques, operations research, and econometrics. She has also published many research papers in various national and international seminars and conferences. She has published 4 books on statistics, and she has a huge experience in the field of statistics and related study. I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of the Department of Economics for today's session.
Thank you, Anna Madam. At the outset, I want to thank Department of Economics for giving me this opportunity to interact with the researchers. Thank you so much, Madam, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Shall I share my screen now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is it visible properly?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. So I was following this entire workshop for the last 6 days, and I thought that everything from each angle this research topic is discussed. So what I felt is now I can discuss with you a real situation where you are thinking to do research. So if you want to go for the research or go for some research project, then how, from where we should start and how to go about. I just want you to take you through the journey of this research in by using a case study, because that is what is only remaining. Other all things are already covered by all the scholars. And just now, Dr. As M. Mohammed has already told you each and every step in this research methodology. So now we will try to find out how we can go about it. If some topic clicks in your mind or it is of your interest, then how to go about it, how to prepare a research project or research work. That is what we will try to do by taking some real life examples. Okay, so my study will be divided into 3 parts. First, I'll just take a brief review of what things are already done in this workshop. Then the major part is the discussion of this case study. And then we will try to discuss some similar examples which can be undertaken for the research. So up till now, we have already seen on the first day that what we mean by research and what is data-related, data-based research. This is what we had seen on the first day. Dr. Kinnari Thakkar madam told us what we call a research and how to find out the research gap, and then how to zero down the topic of your research. That was what told on the first day. On the same day, the other resource person told us about the database research, how to conduct the database research. Then on the third day, we saw what are different research designs, how to determine the sample size, and how to do the data processing. Then once you collect the data, then how to choose the right statistical test based on the collected data, which test is to be used under what circumstances. This is what we saw on the next day. Then we saw how to go with the regression analysis. If you have a quantitative type of data, how to do the regression analysis and the time series analysis, what type of data we call a time series, and where we can use regression analysis. This is what we have already seen. And just now we saw the various aspects of research writing and journal publication. So almost all these things are, all the things related to any research projects are already covered. So I thought of taking one situation where we can think of it as a research problem, and then we will try to discuss how we can come up with a good research out of that topic. To start with, first, let me tell you that I am not an economist. So few things I am not very clear about the words which are used or the technical terms which are used in economics. But I have tried to make it as simpler as possible, and we will try to do this case study together.
Ma'am, I would like to bring to your knowledge that we have participants from different streams and different faculty of study.
Yeah, it is there, but I have tried to take the example which I want all of them to walk through. It is from economics, but I have tried to make it as simple as possible. And first, let me tell you that why I chose this topic. Because see, nowadays we are seeing that government owned companies are going for privatization. They are not doing so well. And whereas the foreign held companies or say the private sector companies are doing better, even if they are from the same sector, they are doing better. And there is a lot of privatization going on in the government sector or public sector undertakings. So what is the problem? That's what I felt, why this is happening. Why the family owned companies or foreign held companies are doing much better than the government held companies. So that's what clicked my mind. And then I just zeroed down on the topic that what is happening. Are the participants not able to see the screen properly? Madam?
No, ma'am, it is visible clearly.
Okay.
They only want your PPT at the end of the session.
Okay.
That's what they're requesting.
Okay. So what I thought is whether there is any relationship between the ownership of the firm or the ownership pattern of the firm and the firm's performance. Whether the performance of the firm is related to who owns the company, what happens to the companies over the years, if it is owned by, say, family, or if it is owned by government, what is the performance over the period of such companies. That is what I wanted, because I feel that why this is all public sector undertakings are going for privatization. So why this is happening? So it is of, say, of our interest. So my broad topic, I may say that I want to study the relationship between ownership pattern and the firm's performance in various regions of the world. That is what I feel. What is happening to the companies which are owned by different entities and how they are performing under different situations. That is what is a topic of my interest. So we can take this as a researchable area. Now this is a researchable area, but what we are required to do is that we will have to first find out, when we say that it is a researchable area, where is the research gap? That is what we are required to find out. I may feel that, okay, this is a topic of my interest, but when you want to do it as a research project, then there should be some research gap, there should be some contribution from your side when you are doing some research. So this is just an example. We can say that we can study how this particular topic is studied by different researchers, and we can study those researches, we can study those papers which are published, and then we may come to know, this is a possibility. So we may come to know that there have been several studies that look at the relationship between ownership patterns and the firm performance in various regions of the world. All over the world, people might have studied that whether there is any relationship between the ownership pattern and firm's performance. But when you go through the papers, you may feel that there are the results of such papers, or the outputs or outcomes of the papers is not very unidirectional. This type of ownership is better than the other type of ownership. Government held companies don't do better than the private owned companies. Such unidirectional inferences may not be there. So there may be some contradictory results when you are studying the relation between ownership patterns and the firm's performance. So why we get such contradictory results? What might be the reason behind this? That is what may be our scope of work. Why this is happening? Though so many people have studied the relationship between ownership patterns and the performance, firm's performance, but why we are getting contradictory results? So we may say that we have found out an area which is a gray area there, and because of which such contradictory results are occurring. And that gray area might be the firm's life cycle. The performance of different firms may vary according to the stages in their life cycles. The firm's life cycle means whether it is in the starting stage, the firm is in the introduction stage, or whether the firm is in a stagnant state, or whether the firm is at its ripe age. What is according to the different stages of the life cycle, firm's life cycle, whether it is in the introductory stage or whether it is in the higher stages of its life, accordingly its performance may change. So this is not the relationship between this ownership pattern and the firm's performance is not studied with the angle of the age of that firm's life, or what is the stage in its life cycle. This might not have been studied by anybody. So this is a research gap. So we have zeroed down some particular area which is not studied previously, and hence our now scope of interest might be, we have to identify at which stage of the firm's life cycle a particular type of ownership pattern will perform superior to others, or we may try to give certain models depending on how the ownership pattern changes with respect to the firm's life cycle. That such a model building we may try to do in our research project. So to start with, we have found the research gap. Now we will try to go forward and do the remaining part of our analysis. So first day, madam told us that once you identify the research gap, then the next step which we are required to do is you should be able to define the terms which are used in your topic. So the topic should be stated in such a way that everything should be clear to each one of them. Each term in the topic should be very clear to the person who is doing the research as well as to the person to whom the research work is presented. So the first and the foremost thing is what we mean by ownership pattern. So ownership pattern may be, we may have identified the ownership patterns as say 4 types. Family held, yani the entire industry is owned by a family itself, or it may be foreign held, or it may be government held, or it may be widely held. This widely held is nothing but the company in which the shareholders have a lot of interest, and public as a whole is interested and is putting money in that particular company, and such type of companies are called widely held companies. So we may divide the ownership pattern into 4 types: family held, foreign held, government held, and widely held. So we have found out what are the different things which come under ownership pattern. Now next thing will be naturally the firm's performance. So the firm's performance may be, say, the economics people know that what are the indicators for the performance of the firm. So broadly, these are, whatever is your topic, you can try to identify what are the indicators in your topic. So in this case, Tobin's Q, which is a ratio of market value of a company to assets replacement cost. This is one of the performance indicators. Higher the Tobin's Q value, better is the performance of the company. Similarly, return on assets. So return on assets is taken as another indicator for the performance of the firm, and then return on net worth. These 3 may be taken as the performance indicators. You can identify few more. Those who are economists, they can identify many other indicators also, but say these are the basic indicators which indicate about the performance of the firm or industry. So this is the first thing. Then after we identify or define these 2 performance indicators and the type of ownership pattern, then we may try to find out, now we want to study this aspect. So what type of firms we are going to consider, whether we are going to consider a particular sector, or whether we want to go for all types of industries or not. So our firms may be either from construction, automotive, pharma, trading, energy, anything. So our broad study may be the study which will include all types of firms. Broad study may be including all types of firms, and then when you go deep, we may say zero down to a particular sector also, or we may compare different sectors, firms in the different sectors. So a lot of study can be done in the same topic. So we can try to find out what type of firms we are going to consider. Then where we are going to study what should be the region in which. So if I am an Indian, I may consider the companies which are listed on the Indian Stock Exchange. And if I am, say, in some other country, we may consider the firms which are listed in that particular country. So where we want to what is the region to which we want to concentrate, that also we can zero down. And then when we say that we want to study the performance indicators based on the ownership pattern, and we know that the stages in the life cycle are going to affect the performance of the firm. So we have to identify what are the stages of life cycle. It may be growth stage, it may be or growth or introduction stage, then it may be maturity stage and the stagnant stage. This is a broad life cycle. This can be further divided into few more stages, but this is a broad stages in the life cycle of any firm. So a firm may be in the growth stage, maybe in the maturity stage, or maybe in the stagnant stage. So this is what the stage of the life cycle would mean. So now we can zero down on the thing that we want to study the relationship between ownership patterns and firm's performance in various regions in Indian corporate scenario. So from the broad topic, I can zero down to the thing that I want to study the relationship between ownership pattern and the firm's performance in various regions in Indian corporate scenario. So this is how we can zero down on the topic. Then we can identify what are the basics behind, what are the basic things which we should consider, like performance indicators, type of firms, then what is the ownership pattern, and so on. Then we have to, once you zero down your topic, now we want to study the performance of the firms.
Ma'am, I would like to just interrupt in between. You are not changing the slides. We are able to see only your first slide.
Okay, I was all the while changing it. Okay, then I think I should share it again.
Yes, ma'am. Now we are on performance indicators slide.
Okay, ये new share में आ रहा है. So when I do the slideshow, it is not showing.
No, ma'am, it's not showing.
So I should keep this only.
Yes, ma'am. This is better.
Yeah, that
you have
was
to click on the slide every time you change your slide.
Okay, so I cannot go in slide share mode.
I think so, because it was not changing earlier.
Yeah.
Now it has changed.
That was the problem I discussed with even Farooq sir.
Okay.
Okay. So so we may zero down. So I'll just, in a hurry, I'll just show you what I had discussed. Okay. Now, is it visible, madam?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So we want to study what is the, we started with a broad topic that I want to study the relationship between ownership pattern and the firm's performance. Then we identified the research gap, that previously other people have studied this relationship, but they have not taken into consideration the firm's life cycle stage, because the performance of the firms changes from the firm's life cycle stage. So this is a gap which we found out, and now related to this research gap, we will try to go about our research. So we, for zeroing down the variables or the things which are under consideration, or defining the terms which are coming in my topic, the first and the foremost thing is the ownership pattern. So what we mean by what are the different ownership, what can be the different ownership patterns? So that is the family held, foreign held, government held, and widely held. So this we identified as the ownership patterns. Then we found out what are the performance indicators. This is from economic theory. This is nothing from my side. I came to know that these are few of the performance indicators. So Tobin's Q, return on assets and return on net worth. These are the performance indicators of the firm. So then we can try to find out what type of firms we are going to go to and collect the data on, from where we are going to collect the data, and what are the different stages in the life cycles which we are going to consider. So the broad stages in the life cycle are growth, maturity stage, and stagnant stage. So now we have zeroed down the topic as studying the relationship between ownership pattern and firm's performance in various regions in the corporate scenario of Indian corporate scenario. So once you identify that, now we want to study the firm's performance. So what all things we are required to collect, what is going to affect the firm's performance, that is what we have to find out. So these are some few of the variables which will be affecting the firm's performance. They may be the age, the size, the leverage, the ownership pattern, then the firm's life cycle stage, then what is the fixed asset utilization, what is the R&D intensity, what is the current ratio. All these are the market indicators, and they tell you something about the performance of that particular firm or that particular industry. So the economics people can go on adding such variables which will be taken as the variables which are going to affect the performance of the firm. So we can identify on what variables we are going to collect the data which is affecting the performance. So in this way you can go on listing the variables on which we want to collect the data. Then we will see from where we are going to collect the data. Now this is a situation where we won't require a questionnaire, but the ready data is available on the stock exchange. Audited statements are available, and they are very authentic statements, and they give you they give us the information about all these variables. Or we can either compute some variables from the data which is collected from the stock exchange. So we have authentic source of data collection, and then once you collect the data, then we can compute various indices, performance parameters, and the entire large data can be available to us. We have to just put that data properly in the format, and then we have to think of what analysis can be done out of the given data. So in this particular case, our data will be, say, name of the company, its size, its age, what is the ownership pattern, what is the firm's life cycle stage, and so on. And in the economics theory, it tells you how to calculate the firm's life cycle stage, how to calculate fixed asset utilization, what is R&D intensity, what is current ratio. All these things can be determined from the economic theory. So with whatever variable you want to study, you try to find out what other variables are affecting the variable which we want to study and try to collect the data. So while collecting the data, here you can see that some variables are in terms of numbers like age, size, leverage, etc. But there are few variables where we are not getting the numbers, like ownership pattern. Ownership patterns are divided into 4 classes: privately owned, government owned, foreign owned, and widely held. So here we are not going to get any numbers when you are noting down the ownership pattern of a particular firm. Similarly, the firm's life cycle stage will be again a categorical variable and not a quantitative variable. So we have to identify what are quantitative variables, what are qualitative variables, and accordingly you have to collect the data. So in this particular case, our data will be of the type, we have a name of the company, its data for, we may say, consider to collect the data for say last 15 years, maybe say from 2005 to 2020. So this is my area or my time period in which I want to study the relationship between the ownership pattern and the firm's performance. So we have to zero down the time period also, and then we have to collect the data. So for every company, you have your age will be changing over time, size will also be changing over time, leverage will also be changing over time. So all these variables are changing over time, as well as there are so many variables we are noting down for the same firm. So such a type of data, which is a multidimensional data involving measurements over a period of time, such a data is called a panel data. So here we are trying to collect the data, which is a panel data, and hence panel data analysis has to be used for analyzing this type of data. So we have to collect the authentic data. After collecting the data, some cleaning work has to be done. When you are collecting the data from anywhere, sometimes while getting the data, there may be few omissions, few deletions, or few wrong calculations. Like they have discussed about the sampling errors and the non-sampling errors. So such things are discussed. So few errors may be sampling errors and the other errors may be non-sampling errors. So this deletion, omission, miscalculation errors are all non-sampling errors. So these errors have to be removed from the collected data and the data has to be cleaned. So we have to first zero down on the time period, zero down on the companies which we are going to collect the data, and then the authentic data source has to be found out, and then the data has to be collected. After collecting the data, some exploratory data analysis has to be done, because what is that data representing, whether all the information collected, whether it is consistent, whether it is reliable, whether it is valid or not. So for that, some exploratory data analysis has to be done. Cleaning of the data is required to be done, because sometimes while getting the data, we may get some values which are not possible to be taken by that particular characteristic. So the cleaning of such a data is required to be done. And if there is any missing data, then that has also is to be taken care of, how to deal with the missing data. And then your entire data is available for your further analysis. So once the data is available for the further analysis, to start with, the simplest type of analysis which we can do is compute the descriptive statistics for every variable under consideration. So our first variable was, say, size of the firm. So what is the size of the firm? What is the average size of the firm? So it's average, variance of the average of the size, minimum, maximum. So such descriptive statistics can be found out for every variable on which we have collected the data or on which we have computed certain constants. So this can be done for each of these performance parameters. Then according to ownership patterns, such analysis can be done. So you will see that to start with, we have a large data which is comprising of many companies which are depending upon the ownership pattern and the stage of life cycle. So when you are collecting such a large data, after cleaning that data, we have to go for checking whether we can use this data for say maybe prediction or for formulating certain models. So when you are trying to formulate the models, you have to check for all the whether the data is whether multicollinearity is there. This was discussed in the previous days, that what is multicollinearity, what is heteroscedasticity, then what is autocorrelation, and then if it is a time series data, then how to check the stationarity of the data. So these things can be done. We will be required to check for multicollinearity, whether the independent variables are correlated amongst themselves. Then for time series data, whether the time series is stationary or not, we can use that unit root test and test the stationarity. So all these things, once you collect the data, you have to check for all these things. And then we can move on for the further analysis. Now, after doing these things, what we can do, what all things we can do with that data. So after doing the descriptive statistics like averages, variances, minimum, maximum, these things, then what we can do is we can use in this particular situation. See, in every situation, all these tests may not be possible. We are doing a case study. So in this case, it is possible to conduct an ANOVA test for life cycle indicators like age, sale, growth rate, dividend payout, R&D expenditure. For all each of these variables, we can have an ANOVA test. So we can use that, and then depending upon what is the what are the p-values in these ANOVA tests, we can find out whether the average age of all industries for different life cycle stages, whether they are same or not, whether dividend payout for different life cycle stages, whether it is same or not. Such questions can be answered by this ANOVA test. So our first level of study will be to identify if ownership pattern has a significant impact on performance on the firm's performance. This is the first level of our study. So when you want to study this, how should you write your null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis? Because we know that when you have certain objective here, our objective is to study the relationship between the ownership pattern and the firm's performance, whether these two are impacting the firm, the ownership pattern is for impacting the firm's performance or not. So here we should write the null hypothesis as ownership patterns do not have a significant impact on firm's performance. Our null hypothesis is always of no impact, no relation, no difference type. So our null hypothesis should be that ownership patterns do not have a significant impact on firm's performance. And what would be the corresponding alternative hypothesis? That ownership patterns has a significant impact on firm's performance, or ownership patterns have a significant impact on firm's performance. So this is how, whatever you want to, what is your objective, according to that we can write down the null and the alternative hypothesis. And then here this left hand side, which you can see in the equation, is a performance indicator. So this left hand side can be Tobin skew when you want to study the performance of the company as a whole. It may be your returns to assets, returns on net worth, return on asset. So depending upon what performance indicator you want to study, that variable will come on the left hand side. And this is dependent upon, I have tried to just write a simple example where this is a linear relationship between the dependent variable, which is a performance indicator, and our independent variables like your operating pattern value, or operating type of operating pattern, size of the firm, then leverage, and then critical ratio, and so on. So what is the market intensity? What is the tax intensity? We know that all these are affecting the performance of the company. So we may try to arrive at certain model which will give us which will express the performance indicator as a function of all these variables which we have written down previously. You can go on adding many other variables which may be affecting the performance of the firm. But while adding or taking out any variable, you have to take care whether all those basic assumptions are satisfied or not. Whether multicollinearity is present or not, it should not be present in the independent variables. Then the autocorrelation, That is, these errors terms should not be autocorrelated. They should have constant variance, which is homoscedasticity. So all those conditions are required to be satisfied. So our aim in this case is to arrive at certain model which will represent the performance indicator in terms of all the remaining data collected by us. So this is our starting basic aim. Once you do the first analysis, means if you do this analysis that there is a relation between ownership pattern and firm's performance, then what we can do at the next stage, we can try to find out whether the ownership pattern is having a positive impact on firm's performance, or whether it changes according to the firm's life cycle stages or not. Because we saw that the firm's life cycle stage and the ownership pattern, these two are the qualitative variables which are present in our model. So the next thing we should be able to do is check whether there is any association between ownership pattern and the stage of the life cycle. If the stage of the life cycle and ownership pattern are related or associated, then that association can be tested by using the chi-square test. So that test we can conduct, and if there is an association between life cycle and the performance, then ownership pattern and the stage of the life cycle, then you will have to study your performance variables for each stage of the life cycle. You cannot include life cycle as a independent variable. For each stage of life cycle, you can try to assess the relationship between ownership pattern and the performance indicators. So this is how we try to zero down on what things can be done and what things cannot be done. So here in this case, our two qualitative variables are associated with each other, and hence both these variables cannot be on the right hand side of the model. So what we are required to do is we have to divide our data in the data of the companies at different stages of life cycles, and the previously tested hypotheses are required to be divided into different stages. So this is how we can try to just tabulate our data, the growth stage, the mature stage, at the stagnant stage, and how many firms are family held in each of the stages. So this is a table which we can construct from the data collected by us. And then using this two-way table, we can try to find out whether these two attributes, the ownership pattern and the stage of the life cycle, whether these two are associated with each other or not. And this is a 4x3 table. So it will have 6 degrees of freedom, and you can use chi-square test for checking whether there is any association between the ownership pattern and the stage of the life cycle. And if they come out to be related, then what we are required to do is we have to test each hypothesis for different stages of the life cycle. That is, for growth stage, we have to test the hypothesis. Then similar hypothesis we have to test for mature stage, and then same hypothesis we have to test for stagnant stage. So this type of classification has to be done because the two variables, the two qualitative variables, are associated with each other. So our original single hypothesis is now getting divided into 3, that in the growth stage, there is no significant difference between ownership pattern on firm's performance. Second will be similar hypothesis for the mature stage, and the third is for the stagnant stage. So we can, same hypothesis will now be tested for 3 different stages of life cycles. So this is how you have to go at the next level when you are studying the data. Now once you test these hypotheses. Either these hypotheses may be accepted or rejected. So using ANOVA, we can check whether these hypotheses are accepted or rejected. So what we do here, we using the collected data, we try to arrive at we use a multivariate analysis, and then we try to arrive at a model. And then we try to see whether those coefficients in the model, whether they are significant or not. If they are significant, then we will see, our conclusion will be that there is a significant there is a significant difference in the ownership patterns on firm's performance. So our null hypothesis is of no significant difference, and alternative will be that there is a significant difference between the two. So the original hypothesis gets divided, then we can conclude about by testing such hypothesis, we will be able to see whether at each stage of the life cycle, whether the firm's performance is affected by the ownership pattern or not. Once you do that analysis, we can again dig deep into the data, and then we can go for some multivariate tests, because here ownership patterns and firm's life cycle on 3 different financial performance parameters if we want to study, because we have seen that there are 3 differential outcome parameters which we are using. So when you want to study all these at a time, you have to use multivariate analysis of covariance, or you have to do the multivariate analysis of covariance. So once we do it, you can study these variables at a time, and then we can use such multivariate. This is taken from one project study. This graph is taken just for an example. If you have 3 different stages of growth, and if you have the average size of the estimated marginal means for the returns on assets, then what is happening with each of the type of family-owned firms, foreign-held firms, government-held firms, and widely held firms. So from this type of graphs, you can find out what type of ownership is better, which ownership is doing better for the returns on assets parameter. So such graphs can be done after you do the preliminary analysis. Then we can go still one level further, and we can try to investigate the different firms according to whether they are family held, foreign held, government held, for optimal threshold shareholdings. In what should be the optimal shareholding so that there is a good performance of that particular firm. So because the percentage of holdings for family held firms may be different for different stages of the life cycle. Similarly, for foreign held firms, it may be different for different stages. So we can try to study what should be the threshold holding limits for each of these type of ownerships. And then we can try to say collaborate or correlate all our results with real life examples. Like we can actually try to see, say for example, if you want to study such a thing, then in case of pharma industry, we have say Biocon is a family held company, Novartis is a foreign held company, and say Granules India is a widely held company. So you can go deep and compare each of these companies separately, and then try to compare them and try to give a model which will work for the different family and for different firm enterprises. So you can go on digging at lower and lower level, and then try to arrive at the conclusions which are applicable for the particular sector, for a particular region, for a particular type of industry, and so on. So once you collect such a large data, you can draw many inferences from that data. You can try to use that data in many different ways. So the simpler conclusions may be of this type, that closely held firms perform better than widely held firms. This may be the conclusion. So here again, you have to use some testing of hypothesis, and we have to find out whether closely held firms perform better than the widely held firms or not. Then at which stage of the life cycle, which type of ownership does better than the other type of ownership. Such conclusions you may get. This is one example that at growth stage, there is no significant difference in the performance between various ownership patterns. However, family held firms perform better than the other forms of ownership. So this may be the conclusion from our data. And what can be the reason? If the firm is a family held firm, then the decisions can be taken faster, and they are very sensitive to the performance of the firm when it is a family held firms, so that the quick decisions can be made, and then the company's performance will be better and better depending upon how quickly the firm adopts to the market conditions. So this may be one of the reasons family held firms perform better. Then at maturity and stagnant stage, foreign held firms outperform other ownerships. This may be even other way around, but such conclusions can be drawn once you do the data analysis, and such results you can get, and then you can try to check whether all these we can try to arrive at a model which will best represent the collected data for a particular sector, for a particular type of firms, and so on. And how we interpret these coefficients. So if the coefficients, say for example, beta 2 is a coefficient of the size in this model. So if this beta 2 is positive, it would mean that as size increases, there will be increase in that particular performance indicator, maybe say Tobin's Q. So if left-hand side is a Tobin's Q indicator, then Tobin's Q may be increasing as the size of the industry increases. But if this beta 2 comes out to be, when you estimate the parameters, if it comes out to be negative, it would mean that this performance parameter Tobin's Q is inversely affected by the size. As the size increases, performance decreases. So we can, the algebraic sign of these coefficients will tell you what type of relationship, or what is the type of cause and effect relationship between that particular variable and the performance indicator variable. Simple example, you consider this, that R&D intensity, that is how much is invested in the R&D by the particular industry over different points of time. So if you are in the growth stage, naturally there is more investment in R&D, and hence it will have a more impact on the performance. But once you go at the later stages of the market cycle, say maybe stagnant stage, they may not be investing more in R&D. So R&D intensity may be less. So these coefficients, whether they are significant or not, each of the coefficients can be tested independently for its significance, and further analysis can be done, and you can arrive at a good model which will be the good representative of the entire class of industries. So this should be our aim, to how to model the given problem in terms of mathematical modeling. Then after that, we can go even one more step further, and we can try to find out whether the foreign ownership at different percentage limits and government ownerships at different percentage limits, at what should be the threshold percentage up to which there should be foreign ownership, up to which there should be government ownership, so that the firm's performance is at the best. That also we can try to arrive at the values, threshold values for each type of holdings. So this type of analysis can also further be done when you have such a data collected. Then So our study basically was intended to identify if there is a significant difference in the firm's performance for different patterns of ownership in the Indian corporate scenario. We wanted to identify the pattern of ownership that optimizes performance. We also tried to identify if the ownership pattern that optimizes firm performance varies over the firm's life cycle stages or not. And then we tried to arrive at a model which will define the ownership pattern to be maintained over the different stages in order to optimize the performance in the Indian scenario. So this was what was intended in this study. And once you collect the data and do the analysis, we should be able to give the answers for each of these conditions. And so once you collect the data and do analysis, you can give such answers, and you can go on going this analysis to the macro level, where you can even compare only two different industries which are in a particular sector. So such macro analysis can also be done when you are collecting such a data and doing its analysis. So from the macro part, you can go and zero down to whatever finer levels you can go, and still get such answers for a particular type of industry, for two different firms, for two different sectors, for two different regions. Such analysis can be done. So this was actually the case study which I wanted to share with you. If you some idea clicks in your mind, then how to go about that particular research topic, and how to collect the data, and how to do the further analysis of that data. Because all the tools of doing this were already discussed with you. So anybody wants to ask anything regarding this? About the economic part, I am not very sure, but I have just tried to give you it as a case study part. Anybody wants to ask anything?
Participants, yes, I'll just allow you people to unmute yourself and can ask your question. Tanuja ma'am, you have your question, you can ask to now. Yes, Tanuja Jadhav, you have raised your hand.
There are few more just topics from, I thought it is for economics, so I just tried to write down some few more topics which are researchable, and what can be the corresponding hypothesis which we want to test. The
Yes.
Interesting topics can be. Does anybody want to talk?
Yes, Tanuja, is
Yes,
there
ma'am.
Tanuja Jadhav?
Huh?
Tanuja
Yes,
Jadhav,
ma'am.
please ask your question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good
Boliye.
afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for such a detailed case study, whatever you have showed and shared with us. Thank you very much for that. I have one query, ma'am, and I want some briefing on, you have mentioned about the ANOVA test. So, ma'am, can you little bit elaborate on that?
See, an ANOVA is analysis of variance, and what does it tries to do? It tries to check whether the average of different variables which are under consideration. Okay, say for example, I'll give you a simpler example: age of the firms in the growth period, age of the firms in the maturity period, and age of the firms in the stagnant period. Okay, you have data of age of different firms in different stages. Okay, so you have this data. You want to check whether average age of the firms in the first stage is significantly different from the average age of the firms at the second stage, and whether this is significantly different than of the average age of the firms in the third stage of life cycle. So you want to compare, check whether there is a significant difference in the average ages of the firms in the three different stages of life cycle. So whenever you want to compare the averages of different variables at a time, more than 2 variables, if there are only 2 variables, you can use t-test. But when you are comparing the equality of the averages for more than 2 variables at a time, you have to use analysis of variance. Same thing,
Yes.
say for your say R&D intensity. Expenditure on R&D by the firms in the first stage, in the second stage, in the third stage. There will be different firms, no, in these 3 stages.
Yes.
So whether the average R&D intensity is same or not, you want to check. So there are 3 different sets of values, and you want to check whether the averages are same or not. So you should use ANOVA.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Got cleared. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Umar, you can ask your question.
Thanks, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. This is Umar
Good
Wasil
evening.
from Baramulla, Kashmir.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thanks you for the such amazing presentation of your content. So, ma'am, I would like to ask a question that while we are approaching to the literature review part of the research, so we found that there is an ocean of the research papers.
Yes, yes.
So which kind of research paper and what are those research papers we must see and we must take into consideration for the paper?
See, when
which
you
we
have
to
seen
read?
lots of research papers, no? So first, you find out the area of your interest. Okay, area of interest you have to zero down, and then you have to find out. There will be thousands and thousands of, because of this Google now, thousands and thousands of research articles and research papers might be available. So you have to find out of which particular area is of your interest. See, here we wanted to study, say, the relationship between ownership pattern of the firms and the firm's performance. So there can be different papers, but how many papers are, there can be some review papers, there can be some papers which are actually using data analysis. So whether such similar study for some other region, for some other set of firms, whether it is done or not. So you try to concentrate only on those papers which are very nearer to your area of interest or to the topic of your research. Because when you Google any topic, just even if a single word is common in the topic's name, you get those all those papers listed, is it not? So you will have to go on reading only the papers which are very nearer to your topic.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks.
That has to be done because you have to go on reading the articles and then find out which are very nearer to your topic. Without that, it's not possible. You will have to read a lot before zeroing down on the specific area of your research. Because in the broader field, many papers will be available. Then what is not done by them, that has to be found out. These things are done, but there is a gap. This is not that this is for a particular topic. You may look at it from some other angle, and that angle was not studied by anybody else. It is possible. So accordingly, okay, yeah, you can talk.
When we use Google, I'm audible, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm audible or not?
Yes.
Ma'am, when we go to the Google Scholar link, so we found there that there are a lot of these publishing companies, so who are publishing these research papers. So some of them are for that standard that we are not able to even read those papers. Like if we go to the Elsevier, publishing company.
Yes.
So when we read,
yes, it's not possible even to assimilate what is told in that paper.
Yes, ma'am. So So the scholars like me, an average scholar, we disappoint from them, and we just go to these 4 to 5 lines and skip that paper.
Yes.
So is there any paper or any publishing company who are who publish the matlab, normal level papers so that an average research scholar can read them?
See, about that, I am really not aware of any, whether there is such a research publishing company is available or a firm is available. I am not aware of that. You see, if your
Thank you,
topic
ma'am.
is
Thanks.
of social relevance and it is very interesting, whether it interests you or not, so then you can read. If you just try to read anything, then it's not possible, because people are doing a lot of work and we may not be able to even envisage what they have done. So you try
Yes,
to
ma'am.
first zero down the topic of your interest, which appeals you,
Okay.
and in which you can work. See, I have just listed out few things which I felt in this today's scenario. Okay, whether weekend working can negatively affect our well-being. It is possible, no? Because if you have to work throughout the week and you have to work on weekends also, it will definitely adversely affect our well-being, our family life, our personal life, everything will get affected. Then you can try such different topics which are comparatively simpler. But here you will have to find out what we mean by well-being, what are the parameters of well-being or not. So whenever you go to any topic, so many things are required to be studied. It's not very easy to do the good research.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for your guidance.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very thankful to you, Bhavna ma'am, for conducting today's session on development of hypothesis and its testing through the case study. Ma'am, you have explained all the steps which are necessary in the proper planning of the research work with appropriate examples. Ma'am, you have also given us the exact procedure wherein we can simplify a broad topic into a very specific topic for our research and apply these various steps adequately to fit the research design as per our objectives. I'm very thankful to you, ma'am, for taking out time and conducting today's session. Now, before we end this workshop, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of Department of Economics, AKI's Poona College of Art, Science and Commerce, to today's resource persons, Dr. As Mohammed sir and Dr. Bhavna Deshpande ma'am, for a very well-informed session and for enlightening our participants. I'm also very glad to express my thanks to our principal, sir, Dr. Aftab Anwar Sheikh, for motivating and supporting us always. My sincere thanks to the Vice Principal, sir, Professor Moinuddin Khan, sir. I'm also thankful to our head of the department, Dr. Shahid Jamal Ansari, sir, without whom this program wouldn't be possible to articulate. I would also like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Vidya Sagar sir and Dr. Gulnawaz sir, and a very special thanks to Mr. Farooq Sheikh sir for his tireless support throughout the entire workshop. I'm very humbled, sir. Thank you so much. I'm also thankful to each and every one of the participants who were sincerely committed to this event and for being here and making this workshop a success. This event would have not been possible without the support of each and every one of you who are present today here. Thank you, one and all. With this, we conclude the 1 week workshop on research methodology.